We will call the June 12th, 2018 meeting of the Airport Commission to order at 5:01. Participating remotely are Commissioners Dan Drake and Tony Buscarin, as their location would make participation unreasonably difficult. As such, all votes will be taken by roll call. The other announcement is that this meeting is being both audio and video recorded. So moving on, we will review and approve the agenda. Are there any comments or concerns with the agenda as drafted?
No.
Hearing none, we'll consider that adopted. We have before us the draft minutes for the May 8th, 2018 meeting. Are there any comments, corrections, or concerns with those minutes?
I have one.
Yes.
On the T hangar discussion, it says that I disclosed that I'd be abstaining from future discussion and votes on the matter, as it's a conflict of interest. I think I would just recuse myself from any sort of vote, but I could be part of the discussion. I think that's what I said. I would recuse myself from any.
So it sounds that your suggestion would be to strike abstaining from future discussion and just those words. So,
yes.
Or actually from future discussion. So it would read,
right.
We'll be abstaining from votes on this matter.
Yes.
So strike future discussion. And is that amenable to everybody, or does anybody have any concerns with that change to the minutes?
No.
Hearing.
As corrected.
Second.
The draft, the amended minutes have been moved for approval and seconded. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Drake?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. So we'll consider the amended minutes of May 8th adopted. We have also before us the to ratify 3 warrants from May 16th, 23rd, and June 6th. Are there any comments on the warrants as were signed?
No. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
So a motion that's been made and second to ratify 516, 523, and 66 warrants. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
And Mr. Drake?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thank you. Public comment? Hearing none, we will move on to pending leases and contracts as set forth on Exhibit 1. And we have a slightly revised handout from what was in the packet. I will turn that over to Mr. Rafter.
Yes, and the change in the handout is we recognize that there was a typo, I think, on the second to last item, Cobo Utility Change Order 3. The amount there should be $118,000, which is what is in the detail on the packet. Somehow the same amount as the other Cobo change order was put in there to $65,943. But the detail supporting the $118,000 is in your packet. Also, we've highlighted as pending the contract change order to Victor Brandon, contract change order number 2, repairs of taxiway Alpha and Echo. And I'll explain that as soon as I get to it, but I would suggest that we would not be, ask Commission not to vote on that this evening. So I'll go through these. Majority of them are the airline annual agreements. We have Reliant Air, Tradewind Aviation, Spectacular, Nantucket Express, United Airlines, Delta Airlines, Hyannis Air Service, and then we have Jaffe Finance Corporation. That was the most advantageous proposal for Hangar 5, which was a very good proposal. We also have Sales Seafood for a beach license, which is an annual event they apply for. McGarvey Concrete Foundations was a tenant out in Bunker Road. It's for a slightly larger parcel that was associated with the survey work we did there. A contract amendment with Lakes Region Environmental for $3,000. And that's an amendment to the number 3 to the 3-year contract that was for additional parts that were identified as needing replacement during the inspection. The other is a contract amendment with Anise Electrical. It's simply an extension, contract extension, and that's for the additional electrical work in the seasonal hold room or tent. Then we have a contract change order, the first one with Victor Brandon for $45,000. That's change order number 1, and that's to add fencing and concrete. That's 100% ASMP funded through MassDOT. The next one is the one I'm asking that we hold up. This was associated with repairs to taxiway Alpha. It was identified as a significant issue in our FAA inspection. When Victor came out and he gave us the estimate of $28,000, he removed the asphalt. We found concrete, or what appeared to be a concrete substance underneath it. That was subsequently removed, and then under that, we found that the subbase was not conducive. It was spongy and wet. They did some test pit digging and found some very unusual things down at about 3 feet or so. And so we had to stop the project and get the engineers to design a fix to it that had some under drainage and some other things. So we're awaiting the final price from Victor, but we believe it will all be covered under the eligible amount of a change order within the grant. So it should all still be a 90% FAA funded project, but I would ask that you don't vote on that this evening. Next is a contract amendment.
Meeting?
I'm sorry?
And wait until the next meeting?
We're contemplating a possibility of a special meeting I may ask for. When I get into the blade discussion, I'll explain that. But this could be an item for that as well.
Okay.
Or the next meeting, either one. So next is a contract amendment with Jacobs for $3,500, and it's a supplemental agreement number 2 to the North Apron. That was for some testing that was done in the project. Contract change order for Cobo Utility. It's change order number 1, and that's for $65,943. And my old version has exactly what that was. That was associated with, there's 3 items here for Cobo, and I'm trying to remember. This one was, it was the change that was necessary to correct the unstable power that was being fed to the vault. So that was that change order. I believe it was that one. Then the next one is Cobo, and this is for $15,400. This is the funding source is actually from the reimbursable agreement from the old tower project, and this is for work associated in the control tower that's related to the changeover of the new airfield electrical system. And then the $118,000 is the other work associated with the change in the vault and all the new switchgear, or not new switchgear, all the items that are reflected in the corrective actions that were necessary for the vault. And then we have a contract amendment for Potters for $25,300, and that is for type 3 glass beads for our maintenance department to use in the painting of the airfield.
Were some of these because the contracts or the whatever the proposals were not complete? Is that why we're having so many of these change orders?
It's a number of different reasons. Some of it was additional work that was needed. The vault, obviously, if you recall, that goes back about a year, and that had to be totally redone. So the FAA has approved the change order of that. Majority of it is just associated with items such as that, and also some additional work that we're able to get because some of the pricing came in below.
And then I had another question, Mr. Actor. In last month's meeting minutes, we say that the airport was going to take over the T hangar. Is this the same T hangar? Or is this another hangar?
Which?
With
the Jaffe?
Jaffe.
That is hangar number 5. It's not a T hangar. It's one of the wooden hangars.
Okay, thank you.
And Their proposal, they'll have to rehabilitate the entire hangar too.
Right. Okay, thank you.
On that one same lease, I was just hoping maybe we could just hit on it quickly because we don't do 20-year hangar leases all that often. I've read it. I do think it appears to be a good proposal, but I just thought it might be worthy of a little bit more discussion.
The RFP went out, and we had offered an abatement if somebody wanted to come in and refurbish the hangar. We required them to rehabilitate, refurbish the hangar. And we offered a rental abatement with a minimal rent of $600 a month. The offer that the Jaffes made is $1,100 a month and no abatement. So they're going to refurbish the entire hangar with no abatement and pay us more than what we initially established as minimum rent.
And if they put the 320 square foot addition on the back, does the rent change?
No, but because that was considered a square footage, but the location of that rear building may have to be shifted because of some other obstruction things.
And then the other piece, I noticed on the plan, there's still no, dimensions in terms of a lease area. Is there going to be another? There's just a red line on the plan. So getting back to my survey, if we're doing leases, it just seems that we should be having, not just a red polygon drawn on a GIS map, just to avoid any future, disputes in terms of what is the leased premises.
And I'll double check. Typically, we require a survey too. So
I just didn't see it. I only saw the GIS map. Okay. Again, not opposed in any way. Just making sure that this is tight. We're doing it for 20 years. And then the one other thing that I noticed was in their proposal, they state that their plan would be to allow transient use of the hangar. And is that of any concern?
No, it's actually a benefit.
I mean,
they're not looking to make money off it. What they're basically saying is if somebody's stuck and needs to do some maintenance, they'll allow them into the hangar.
I love the concept. I just want to be sure that it's not going to be some kind of.
It's not a business that they're running now.
Yeah, and I had a question about that also, because that's the permitted use is to allow that, but then also we're asking them to have prior written consent before. So is that I was just thinking transient airplanes might not. Does that mean every time they sublease it, they come to the commission?
Well, the commission also can mean the airport manager or their designate.
Oh, okay.
So we just want to know if they are putting somebody else in there, so it isn't turning into a business, and that's why we withhold that right to have the written approval.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on any of the leases, contracts, or agreements? Is there a motion to approve the leases, contracts, and agreements as shown on Exhibit 1 with the change on the COBO number 3 to $118,000 and not including Victor Brandon for the $28,000?
Make that motion.
I'll make that motion.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so the motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Topple, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planter?
Aye.
Mr. Muscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Drake?
Aye.
That's vote aye. Thank you. Moving on, Mr. Rafter, would you care to review the pending matters listed on item 5?
On the general fund repayment, I spoke with the town finance department. They're continuing to put together their documentation to appeal the FAA, but I don't believe that has been submitted to them yet. Brookfield Assets LLC subleased to FedEx. I'm glad to announce that this will be coming off the agenda. The non-attornment is attached and all the paperwork has been completed by legal, so that matter is closed. And on the crew quarters development, I'm preparing various alternative funding scenarios and working with the finance director to investigate what financing mechanisms may be available to us, because I'm not quite sure if we can actually do bonding for employee housing. So we're working on that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Rafter on any of the pending matters? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 6, the FAA grant acceptance. Did we already?
No, we have not received that, so we'll have to put that on hold.
It remains pending. And item 7, we'd like to have a discussion regarding the non-union employees, which we have 7, for the cost of living adjustment discussion. And Mr. Rafter, would you like to give us a brief introduction to?
I'm sorry, excuse me, but
Yep.
I think Katie is bringing to my attention that we need a vote on the recognition, non-disturbance, and attornment agreement
You have to sign it.
for FedEx.
Okay,
So I
thank you for.
apologize.
So we'll just back up quickly to under pending matters, item B, which was the Brookfield Asset Bridgetown LLC sublease, which has been on our agenda for some time, and we do have to sign it. So there is essentially, it appears to be an agreement listed in Exhibit A on the last page between Brookfield, Federal Express, and the Commission. Is there a motion to endorse the recognition, non-disturbance, and attornment agreement?
I'll make that motion.
Is
I'll
there a
second.
Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Topham, Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
and Mr. Drake?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That carries. Thank you, Katie. Back to the non-union employee discussion.
Yeah, this is typically the meeting where the commission will discuss the potential increase for non-union employees. Last year, the non-union staff received 2%. The new agreement with the union is 2%, 2.5%, and 2.5%. So we're consistent with the first year of their agreement, and typically it follows the same, but that's at the commission's discretion.
And that was 2.5, you said?
We signed that contract in May, right? And it was effective July 1, 2017, correct?
Correct.
So effective July 1, 2018, doesn't the 2.5% come into play?
Yes, the union will receive 2.5% July 1 of 18.
Therefore, I move that for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2018, that the non-union employees receive an increase of 2.5%.
Is there a second for discussion?
Yes, there's a second. Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second. And is there any discussion on the matter?
Would it be 2018 fiscal year, or is it?
It's
2019.
19
actually
fiscal
fiscal 19.
19.
Yeah, is what it would be. That's right.
Fiscal 19 beginning on
July 1 of 18. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. I always get confused with
I know. It's
We talked a little bit, Mr. Rafter and Mr. Gasparo and I, about coming up with some kind of formula, benchmark, matrix, or somehow so we could, if it was appropriate, differentiate between the non-union employees based on contribution, some measure of differentiation. So we're going to try to come up with something and get it to the commission to consider in time for next year.
that. I'll prepare that some relationship to the performance.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, we will have a roll call vote. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Plancer?
aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Drake?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thank you. We had the FAA Part 139 certification inspection back in May, and there's a letter in the packet regarding some of the findings. Mr. Rafter, would you care to
Yes,
Commission?
the inspection took place on May 7th through 9th, and as you said, the letter of correction is in your packet. There were 8 areas identified to be corrected with some sub-areas underneath of that. This is many more than I would like to see, and I have made it clear to staff that we're not going to be seeing this again. There is enough shared concern with all staff, and we've met internally with all layers, and we've completed probably half or more of the corrective items already. And we've asked for one extension. We may be asking for a short extension on the land and hold short light issue, but I would say that there's been tremendous progress with staff in addressing FA's concerns, and we'll continue to meet the remaining deadlines.
And we can look forward to, when this is sort of all complete, a letter.
Or a summary. We'll get a letter from them, but I will give you a summary of a spreadsheet that I have of what was completed when, and a full closeout of all the items.
Very good. Are there any comments or discussion on the compliance letter?
I know that I agree with Mr. Rafter. It was disappointing to get this after getting so many years of really great ones.
And staff shares those concerns too. So,
and I'm glad that things are getting done.
Thank you. Moving on to the fiscal year 18 contingency reserve transfer discussion. Mr. Rafter.
I'd like to ask the Commission's permission to use the contingency reserve, or I don't know if it's labeled reserve, I think it's contingency fund. You may recall that this was established a couple of years ago when we put $25,000 in the line item, but I believe it was also discussed that the Commission would have approval over use of that. What we'd like to do with it is use it to match the ASMP grant that we're going to get we received for the rates and charges study. Typically, we would use professional services, but as we're getting close to the end of the year, it's getting tight in the professional services line item, so we'd like to be able to use this. This is, I know, for unforeseen and emergency events. This was somewhat unforeseen that we didn't expect to have the ASMP grant, and it was an offer that was made, so we'd like to utilize that to match the grant.
And just to be clear, if we didn't match the grant, we'd lose the grant.
Yes, that's correct.
Any further discussion on the use of the contingency fund to match the ASMP grant?
I guess what happens to that? Are you going to be able to recoup it? The money that we're putting into this?
We're getting an additional $80,000 for the $25,000 that we spent.
Thank you.
And then it'll be replenished in next year's budget, effective July 1. So,
because I know Jamie was really trying to get that built up. So,
is there a motion to approve the use of the contingency fund for this purpose?
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
Well, Dan, you can second.
Dan and Mr. Drake and Ms. Planzer both made the motion at the same time, so
I'll go
take
second.
one motion and 1 second. Okay, thank you.
I'll second it. Take the Planzers and I'll second it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
I reluctantly vote yes.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
And Ms. Drake?
Aye.
Vote aye as well. Moving on to the manager's report.
on the project updates, the vault replacement project last night was the electrical cutover for the new service. That went well. There's still about 2 weeks left of work before the system is finally commissioned and the controls are put into the control tower. On the FIDS PA project, the PA system is complete and operational. In fact, we received one complaint that it was too loud. It's ready for closeout. We are looking to do a final inspection with FAA and MassDOT of that project, the ramp area, and our interactive employee training on June 27th. I had a meeting today with Jacobs. They're still in communication with MassDOT. attempting to get some additional funding for the PA project, so we're waiting to see how that plays out. Ramp Area 3, that is complete, but what we're working to do is use that grant for the taxiway Alpha and Echo repairs that we identified. As I mentioned earlier, taxiway Alpha has become a little bit bigger project than we anticipated, but the FAA has approved using the funding that's available in the grant as long as we don't exceed the original contract amount, and there should be adequate funds to accomplish that. The geometry issue, we had a meeting last Friday with the FAA and various subject matter experts to review the alternatives. They're going to be preparing their recommendations. We narrowed it down from about 8 alternatives to 4, and they want to get it down to about 2 more. So they're going to develop a report based on discussion at the meeting, and then with the group further evaluate it, try to bring it down to 1 or 2 alternatives. The restaurant vestibule, we're working with HTC. They had some concerns about the size of the windows, and we've asked them for some consideration, but we have to, I believe, resubmit an application for that. The restaurant, as everybody's aware, is open. We're still awaiting the electrical plan for their Crosswinds to go, and discussing the portable bar in the hold room. I believe they're proceeding with working to obtain the necessary permits for that. I was unable to get in touch with Larry today to determine the status on the Crosswinds to go project, but I'll verify that this week. The additional capacity, expanded hold room, the tent is up. The gates were being installed today. The electric's going in today. Its target date is the 14th, 2 days from now. Should be operational, and things look like they're going on track, and I'll thank Noah for that. Shepherding that project was not an easy job. The 5th and 6th positions, I think we mentioned, we looked at a 5th commercial air carrier position. We were able to get actually a 6th one too, but for a smaller jet type aircraft, so that's completed. The markings project is complete, and one of the things that was a contributing factor to the letter of correction items was the contractor worked right up to the day before the inspection in removing paint, water blasting it, and replacing the paint. Unfortunately, some of his trucks drove into the grass and created ruts that we were unable to repair before the inspector came out. But that project was completed well under budget, and we're going to be utilizing the funds for that to do additional painting in-house that's required, and it was identified as part of the inspection program. I mentioned Taxiway Alpha, just a little more information on that. Once the asphalt was removed, what we thought was concrete was removed, and then when the engineer came out, found out that there was really no structural integrity to whatever that material was. It wasn't quite concrete. And I'm going to look to Dave to correct me if I'm wrong, because he was running this project. But again, the good news is that there are funds available from the other project. The engineer believes it's a pretty straightforward fix, and we're awaiting cost proposal from the contractor on that. But it's something that right now we have an open taxiway. When I say open, it's the surface has been removed, and there's a big hole out there between the 2 taxiways, which is critical. So we have to get that accomplished quickly. The rates and charges are moving along well. They have the model at about 90% complete. Jamie's been working closely with them to supply and clarify additional information. They also have provided us some sample language with regard to fair market value and the lease increases, and we're asking them to review the draft policy and provide comments to us for better direction, but they have identified why and how we would be in compliance with whatever policy we're going to be developing, or what we need, the guidelines for that at least. On the RFP bid side of the house, you may recall we issued a request for expression of interest for the old FBO. Flyblade submitted the expression of interest. We sent them a term sheet. They agreed to the term sheet. Legal has taken that term sheet and developed an agreement. I've been reviewing that. It's about a 40-page document. The challenge we're facing is that Blade would like to be operational by July 4th. We couldn't have it ready for tonight because it still has to go through, finalize our internal review, send it to Blade and their attorneys. Once we resolve it with our attorneys, and then come back for execution. So I would like to ask the commission's indulgence for possible special commission meeting once this is ready to go for execution, so that we're not holding them up before July 4th. They would like to get in there and do remodeling of the structure at their own risk as well prior to the agreement. They acknowledge that they understand there's no agreement, there's nothing in place, but they would like to do it at their own risk. So I'd like to ask the commission if we could consider that.
And when do you think that might be?
Probably the last week of this month, but just prior to 4th of July falls on a Wednesday this year, so we're probably expecting traffic the weekend before as well as the weekend after. So,
Are you looking for discussion on this particular issue?
well, if I may, before that, because I can try to anticipate some of the concerns and comments.
Good, thank you. That's why I waited.
So it's taking us a little longer to internally review this because we have a number of concerns, and our attorney has done a very good job of writing in what is approved and what is not approved, but I want to get a little more specific on those items, as well as some of the other things that I just want to clarify responsibilities for in terms of construction, utilities, et cetera. This is an as-is, it's yours, hands off, but making sure that, one, the activities in the building are limited and tied directly to an aeronautical use, which, again, attorneys have done a pretty good job defining that in the draft that I've read. If they are going to have any alcohol in there, they must receive all permits, and we've already clued in the licensing department with the town. Also, that there would be no alcohol allowed outside the premises of that building, and that all passengers must be escorted by crew members once they depart that building. So they have to have a separate security door, and I need to review, they may need to have an exclusive area agreement for security as well with TSA. So these are some of the things that we're looking into as part of the comments that I just caught in the rough draft of the agreement.
Ms. Tom?
Well, I'm not really for them. I'm telling you, I'm for them to open before July 4th, and we have to, go to their standards. They did not prove themselves to be a good tenant last year, and I just don't think this is something that I want, or a group that I want to deal with as a commissioner.
Okay.
I was wondering, when was the due date on the RFP? I'm just trying to think.
It was
in fairness, is this their emergency becoming ours?
No, it wasn't an RFP. It was request for expression of interest, which was the town had never dealt with one of those before either. So there was a slight delay there. I don't know the exact dates of when it was due, but it's a little bit on our side too in terms of the timing of this. If you recall, we were not quite sure what we wanted to do with this building, and that's where we came up with the process of developing an REOI. So
I have a few comments or concerns as well. I know that this is only a piece of the term sheet. I'm probably going to start sounding like a broken record, but again, the plan, that attaches Exhibit A, I'd like to see that when we do get the plan, that it is, properly described in terms of, dimensioned area, so that there's no dispute as to.
No, I apologize. I don't know what was in your packet.
We have just a 2-page, or I guess it would be a 3-page term sheet.
Oh, okay.
It references a plan.
They've submitted we gave them the floor plan of the building.
Mm-hmm.
They marked it up and sent back to us what their proposed renovations are to it with all the details.
So we haven't seen that, as well as in terms of exterior. I think we should also have a plan.
We made it clear to them if there's to be any exterior, it has to go to HDC, and they've indicated they have no plans for exterior.
I'm thinking of horizontal. In other words, the plan area. So you've got the parking spaces.
Yeah. Okay.
What is the footprint, if you will,
right,
of their leased.
Right. There's a little grass area out on the ramp.
The leased area, right? Just so that to prevent, again, dispute.
So a floor plan and a site plan.
Expansion. As well as I mentioned to you, Mr. Rafter, this morning, one of my concerns and I know that this is only a piece of what we're going to see, is signage. I think that that's extremely visible building for everybody entering the airport. It's sort of the first thing you see. And if there was signage that was in any way not in keeping with, the character of the airport, and, they tend to be maybe a little flashy. I don't know that,
Well, and
I have to get their signage approved by the HDC too.
yeah, and
Right.
any other plans too have to go through our construction alteration application process.
So again, I just want to be sure that, and then in terms, this is just my thought. I think I'm going to have to be convinced to say yes to allowing alterations of the premise prior to an agreement. And one of my concerns is sort of that mentality of previous investment. In other words, all of a sudden it's time to approve it. It's like a shotgun thing. We need it in order to operate. And there's something that we don't agree with. And then it's, but you let us put
That's
X tens of thousands of dollars in, even though you said it's at risk.
a very valid point.
A, how well protected are we? And, B, is it simply not good policy? The other side of it, just to speak on both sides, is there's a potential tenant for a building that hasn't been used. Wouldn't mind starting off on a good foot. It's also enhanced air service, if you will. So I'm sort of just putting out, I think, to hopefully initiate discussion among the commission in terms of some of the issues that I see.
But if, to your point, and it's very valid, if in fact the commission were to entertain a special commission meeting before the end of the month, that's only 2 weeks away. Now, granted, they'd like to get in, but again, I'd like a lot of things too. So, maybe if we have a final document that has all that, and then it delays them 2 weeks before they start their construction.
I mean, one other thought on that is that it's probably incentive, if they're not doing the work, to help get
Get the
everything
document done.
finalized.
Yeah.
Documents,
I agree with
petition-wise.
you. Arthur, I think that's a good plan. I think we should tentatively schedule the meeting for the end of that last week in June to give them time to get this thing worked out and tell them they can't do anything until then in the premises.
Okay.
I wouldn't be opposed to measurements, or, if
Design,
they needed to get in there to look so that they can make, work on plans or something like that. But I think physical alteration.
They've been in the look and they've
So you're already-
started sketching things and
But
stuff.
if they need some kind of access for that, I don't think it necessarily needs to be to a level of, non-cooperation to prevent access. But I think physical construction. And the other part of that is, what about building permits?
Apparently, if it's just interior work, there's none required. So I understand, and that's all they want to do.
Electrical, plumbing.
They plan on not doing any. They're using all the existing.
Do you know what they are
Just
planning on
fiction.
doing, or what they're?
Essentially, they're moving one of the walls where, how it was split into where our admin side was, and then the FBO and the restrooms in between. Well, one restroom, they'd be unisex restrooms. One be associated with a separate operation, if you will, where the admin would be, and the other be associated with the lounge side of it. And then just minor modification of some walls and counter and things, and basic things, new flooring, ceiling tiles, light fixtures, that kind of stuff.
Light fixtures and so forth, don't they have to have it for that?
I don't think so. If they're just
The wiring
replacing
of the
them,
walls and so forth, if there's anywhere they're moving them?
if they're doing wiring or moving, yes.
And I believe there's a certain amount of money that when you spend so much, then you have to really go for the ADA and all of those other issues. But Arthur, you might know more about than that.
That's in the draft agreement that our attorney's prepared to, I think.
Yeah, I think all the more reason why.
But I don't think they're
We should
meeting any of those
probably
thresholds. But no, I
try and
don't
facilitate
disagree
our
with.
side of things.
We will get it back to them ASAP.
It didn't sound like anything that would keep them from doing business.
2 weeks is 2 weeks.
Does anyone feel differently about that? I don't think we need a vote or anything unless
I
someone else feels
don't
different.
think so.
I could run a vote to back you up to say there's to be no physical construction until the lease is signed, then I think that's appropriate. As for Mr. Rafters to back him up.
Was that a motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? Mr. Hoppen, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Blanzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Drake?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. And we'll look for a notice for a meeting date once you're able to get that
Yes.
pulled together.
Yep.
Thank you.
On the airport,
I'm going to have to excuse myself. I have another commitment that I have to leave for. Tom, are you going to mention about Cape Air?
yes,
You want
the,
me to before I go?
no, you can, whatever. You want to do that?
If I may,
Yes.
Chairman, if I might deviate from the agenda for just a moment, I guess this falls under Commissioner's comments. We were approached to see whether the chair would permit Cape Air to be on the agenda originally for tonight, but they asked them for the next meeting to discuss air service. I think Dan Wolf, the chair, will be over for that meeting as we understand it, but we know nothing more about it. So I have agreed that he be put on the agenda for that evening. I think it'll be an interesting and hopefully useful discussion that we have with him. So I just wanted to mention that. I assume nobody has any objections.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I have to go.
Okay, good night.
Thank you. See you later, Dan.
We'll move back to the manager's report. I believe operations update.
Well, before operations, just two other items on the RFP bid. Airport gas, we are continuing negotiations. At Sun Island Road, we're reissuing that RFP, but it's a little more complicated than we thought. It's not just a simple reissue because as we do more RFPs, we learn more lessons and put more things in it. And so Janine's updating that. On the operations side, Delta began service last Friday and American starts later this week, either Friday or Saturday. NOAA attended a meeting last week called Jumpstart, which is essentially speed dating for airlines. And I'm going to put them on the spot and ask them to give you a few minutes briefing on that.
Hi, Noah Garberg, Assistant Airport Manager. Tom's description is very apt. You fill out sort of a dance card. The airlines fill out a similar one on airports they will meet with, and you get your meet and match. We focused on incumbent airlines this year. My first attendance of Jumpstart. Just the idea the cost of living is high enough out here. It really is a pro to meet with your incumbents. However, we were privileged enough to meet with a couple outsiders who aren't currently providing service to Nantucket. When I meet with our incumbents, my goal is always talk to them about sustainable air service. We are looking for, whether different things, whether it's higher frequency or more investment in the shoulder season. We try to, meeting with the airlines, we're trying to walk them in slowly into more and more service, but never sort of a overinvestment where they would then have to pull back. I think the industry statistic is if you lose air service, it takes about 4 or 5 years to actually regain that same level of service. So it's very important not to get an airline to overinvest. We generally avoided making specific pitches to airlines, except for one exception. American Airlines has been investing heavily in the region as of late. They're now offering direct service to Worcester out of Philadelphia, and I believe they added a second flight. So we did approach them. We did some look into the numbers, and the metropolitan Philadelphia region, after Boston, New York, and D.C., is a strong market. There's indications that it could support a peak summer season daily or less than daily service. So we brought this to their attention. We said we think there's a case for flying this on a regional jet. They seemed receptive. They will obviously go back and look at the numbers and make a spreadsheet decision based on that. Another item that was interesting, the Massport has an approved certificate to operate a seaport in Boston Harbor. There's some groundside access issues that are being resolved right now, but there are a few smaller airlines that run amphibious Cessna Caravans that are looking to develop a New York to Boston seaport market and then spin off airports off of that service. So Nantucket, the Vineyard, Provincetown, Block Island are all potential markets for that. Amphibious Caravan still able to land on a conventional runway. That's a small part of our air service development outlook, but that's something that could happen. And we're fortunate we're able to meet with a couple other airlines who are interested in competing year-round in our market, but as Tom will tell you, he'll believe you when the check clears before the aircraft shows up. Some of those are still on a 2 to 3 year time frame. Jet SweetX is one firm that is already present on the West Coast and is looking to expand to the East Coast. Be happy to take any questions.
Anyone? Thank you for the update.
Yeah. Thank you, Noah.
Continuing, Memorial Day weekend sales were down 4%, which equates to about $10,872. Our capital requests, we received notice from the town that 10-year request beginning with 2020 is due on July 16th, so we're going to be working to try to meet that deadline. We held a mini airport day last Sunday. The attendance was a little light. We put it together somewhat last minute, so we're going to work to build that and promote it a little further in advance next time, but again, well received. The Nantucket Flying Association Aviation Camp takes place the week of the 25th, and we're working with them on coordinating a number of static displays and other items. Any questions before we go to statistics?
Just one. The capital request lists, will we as the commission see that? So we should see it just
You
a few
should see-
days
yeah.
due on the 16th. Will we have that on the agenda?
I'll
or
try to
is
get
that
it out
for-
even before the meeting, but yeah, it'll be on the next month's agenda.
Is there any need for any discussion or input that you see now?
The theme actually for us is trying to minimize it. We're trying to reduce how much capital we're going to be putting in 2020 to try to just start balancing out and reducing our debt service and getting things aligned. There are still some projects that we have a need for, and there is, more importantly, what's rising to the top, this whole issue of the $1 billion omnibus funding bill that was put out there for priority airports, and we were listed as a priority airport. There's also another $750 million that's being kicked around in a FAA DOT spending bill. Both of these will be eligible for, and if we don't make those, what it does is it frees up a lot of discretionary funding. So we have one big project, Taxiway Echo, which is probably an $8 to $10 million job that we would like to put in for there. The non-primary airports of the $1 billion will be getting 100% funding for these projects. We don't know about the primaries, which is us. And the other project we're looking at is security. Three of our systems are in need of significant upgrades. So we're looking at those. But other than that, I will try to get you a draft as soon as possible of what we're looking at for projects. There are some other smaller ones that we're contemplating too.
Thanks. And I guess my only other comment would be if we need to on security, I believe we could discuss that in executive session if there was something that you needed.
If it's SSI, we'll have to do it that way. But I think I can cover it in generic terms too.
Anybody else with anything on the operations update? Going on to statistics.
On statistics, the ops were down 34.3% for the month and 17.4% year to date. Again, going back to what Noah said, you lose air service and it takes quite a while to recover. We're still seeing the impacts of not only the ferry, but the loss of Island Air with that. The general aviation operations were up 2.6% over last April. And enplanements were up 10.33%. So even though we're seeing a drop in operations, we're seeing an increase in the enplanements. And again, some of that has to do with, although not yet impacted, we'll see even bigger change with larger gauge aircraft. And year to date, they're down 3.01% for their enplanements. Cape Air saw a 27% increase, while Nantucket Air had a 19% decrease, and Tradewinds was up 6%. Retrix was also up 8% over last April. In terms of markets, Cape Air experienced a 6% increase in the Boston market, New Bedford traffic continues to jump with 104% increase, or 429 passengers, which is fairly significant. If you recall, last month they had a significant jump as well. The overall Hyannis market saw a total decrease of about 1%, or 17 passengers, with Cape Air down 110 passengers, Nantucket Air decreasing by 19%, or 169 pax, and Retrix increasing by 42 passengers, or an 8% increase. Vineyard traffic was up nicely as well, 23%, only 25 passengers. On the fuel side of the house, the Jet A gallons sold for April for up 27.33%, and year-to-date 8.2%. However, for May, they're down 9.13%. So we're keeping a close eye on that. As you all know, the price of fuel has been climbing rapidly. Avgas is up 28.7% for this April, and year-to-date down 13.5%. And for May, it's up about 8.23%. Freight for April was down 6.7% over last April, and year-to-date up 2.7%. And you can see on the next slide, UPS, Wiggins was up 18%. Everyone else was down in the freight market. And on the noise side of the house, we had the same number of complaints as last year. It was 1, and it was for a VFR flight that was in the established corridors. NOAA investigated and responded to the resident. The only other items I have under personnel, seasonal positions, we're experiencing some turnover in some of the gate guards, but all the positions are filled. We also hired a full-time maintenance position as a replacement to someone who left previously, and that new employee began yesterday. His name is Jeff Beamish in the maintenance department. That's my report.
Are there any questions or comments on the statistics or personnel report?
I have a couple. What's happening to the gate guards? They found other jobs, or what?
They were not satisfied with the schedule that they were given. We had a change of responsibility of control of the supervisor in that area, and they deemed it necessary to have them additional hours on certain days that work with our traffic. And the ones that we had were not satisfied with that, so we had 2 others that immediately stepped up to the plate.
Anything else from anybody else on statistics or personnel? Commissioners' comments.
I have a couple of. I'm hoping that the landscaping or the cutting of the grass around the airport is going to be done promptly. I don't know. Last time I looked, it wasn't great. The other thing is TSA. They only had 1 gate opened, and we were promised last year that we were going to have 2 gates open for pre-approval. They had like 5 or 6 employees, TSA people, that were doing nothing while you had to wait to go through this 1 gate. And I'm hoping that that can be addressed. The other thing I have in here, and then I got a complaint from a taxi driver about Uber. What can I do about Uber? I mean, we can't do anything, can we?
I apologize. I should have put that on there. The latest update on that situation, we were unable to have the governor's office intervene in a supplemental bill to, if you will, balance out, make it fair and equal for us to be able to control the TNCs, as they're known, transportation network companies. So we have a name, and Ann from the Vineyard is leading this charge with our, joining with us, Hyannis and P-Town. We have a name in the governor's office that we're going to be seeking additional assistance, but the next bite at the apple apparently is not until November. Unfortunately, at the same time that they did not pass that supplemental, they did enforce or pass a new law which increases the tax on rental cars as well. So we're going to enlist their support, as well as the Taxi Association, in petitioning the governor's office to make the necessary changes. But we did try. We tried it through our various sources, and unfortunately, they thought it was too controversial. But apparently they didn't think it was controversial to pass the additional tax on rental cars.
Well, I said good morning to the gentleman, and he said, "What's good about it?" He said, "Uber." And then I was not feeling well, so
It's not.
I just went and walked away. I don't even know who he was. Nobody
But
ever.
it's unfortunate. It's not fair. We're
understand.
unable to charge them. We're
I
unable to put
totally
any controls on them because of the state law.
So that's, I think, all my gripes for today.
Is there any other commissioners' comments? I just had one, which was I did enjoy the mini airport day, and I would like to see, us perhaps try to do that a little bit more in the future. I think it could be a real positive community, type of an event, balanced with, certainly not overly disrupting on, airport operations, understanding that, it is burdensome to some extent on employees, and whether it, means overtime. But
We're going to work to build on it. Too.
yeah, I think that keep in mind, I think that it was, maybe starting small like that was good, to show that sort of a demonstration of how you might set it up, because you certainly could have accommodated quite a few more folks.
Yeah.
Without then being overwhelmed. Maybe there was a few lessons learned or not. I don't know. But I'd love to see something like that. I agree with fairly short format, a few hours kind of a thing, a little better advertised. And
We may look at that as well as possibly a different style or type in the fall, where it's more of a fly-in type thing for the fall. Try to encourage the smaller aircraft in the shoulder season to come in too.
And it might not, and even if you didn't do the fall, if you found that this weekend, perhaps the weekend you did it, perhaps, timing wise, as you and I had a brief discussion, was good, then maybe that even makes it a little easier to just sort of, it's always good when you do start to, I think it's called tradition, but you establish something that is, of course, then you get stuck into the have to keep it fresh, right? Then you get the same trucks.
But if it works, that's okay. We can do it.
Yeah. Anyway, I appreciate the efforts of, the employees that were there, and I thought it was great.
Thank you.
If no one else has any other commissioners' comments, are there any public comment? Yes. So, would you please? We know who you are. Would you please identify yourself?
Jackson, it's not really Tech Association. But
It's not my word.
You have to talk to the microphone a little bit
been
more.
driving for 25 years or whatever. But a couple of things like Ms. Topham said, that it's pretty. I took some pictures. And the weeds out in front of the building are almost waist high. I'll leave these with you. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. She helped me with it. I asked for the last year or the year before. And last year they didn't address the front of the airport at all. In front of the terminals, the main terminal, and over to the side till the first week in August. And can I leave this with you?
Yes, please.
Yeah. And I asked Mr. Raptor for a barrel. We've got a barrel over there in the yard between the restaurant.
Just keep
And
it back to the microphone.
Well, you can leave the pictures if you want, and then we'll circulate those. Yep.
And I don't want to make excuses. We are getting on top of that, but our maintenance department we lost one for physical issues, we lost one for resignation, and a second one for personal. So we are down 3 out of 9 people. So it's 30% of our staff. But I appreciate it, and we'll get on that.
Yeah, the barrel just disappeared. It very helpful. They were using the dog do for regular trash, and there's not a trash barrel between the main terminal and until he had put that one in. There's not one in the gazebo area, but now there was one on that lawn. But there's nothing until you get over to the ops building. But I noticed this week lack of carts. They don't bring them back out. You pull in with your cab, and then you say, "Can I get you a cart?" And you look, and there aren't any. Then we're running into the building and into the parking lot looking for them. So I don't know whether it's a shortage of staff or what, but that's an issue, and it's time consuming, and it leaves us parking longer to discharge our passengers. The weeds. There's one issue on the regulations that in the where it says The passenger has the option of choosing any cab or line, telephoning for a taxi, so on and so forth. And at the end, they can have whatever the one they want. The last sentence should be removed at this point, we think. It says, however, no vehicles may be forced to move to accommodate the departure out of sequence. So the people want to get into my cab, and 2 cabs behind me won't move. The only reason that was put in there, God rest his soul, was because of Mr. Glidden, Marcy Glidden. He couldn't back up. And when he would back up, he would go up on, he blew a tire. He couldn't. He just couldn't do it. So that's been in there. That we appreciated if that would be removed, because sometimes you get a cantankerous cab driver that says, well, I'm not moving. It says right in the regs. But that's the only sentence in the regs I remember.
Okay.
And the other thing, not to beat the dead dog, but just the Uber situation quickly. On the back 2 pages of those pictures, you'll see that they park wherever they want. They come in, they park, they do their work in our grid spaces, which need to be repainted. They haven't been repainted for at least, I think, 3 years, 2-3 years. The drop-offs with the yellow grids in front. And there's a picture in there of a gang of people last weekend over by the they all got waiting for Uber. They got all with phones out, all waiting.
That's what I've been observing too. They're sitting there with their phones waiting for it.
Yeah, they're over there, and you know what they're using? They come one Uber after another, pull right into the handicap spot. You see the picture there, yeah. And they're one after another. And the other thing they do to mess things up is when you come in, they all go over and line up on the left-hand side towards the parking lot. And they don't identify themselves. They're supposed to have a U in the front window and the one in the back. And I would appreciate it, we would appreciate it, if the officer would go over and say, don't come in here again until you properly identify yourself. Put your U in the front window and the one in the back. They line up on the left-hand side, do their business, and families coming in to pick up,
No place to go, yeah.
They have no place to park. And then they start to be out in the middle. And then there's a safety issue. A little kid pulls away from a parent, car goes flying through. It's dangerous. I'd really like to see them. We thought, Mr. Raft, I don't know, it was a hearsay thing, that we're in the parking lot, where you come into the parking lot, over on the right, they did a brick platform for the bus years back.
Mm-hmm.
And things panned out that wasn't a good place for the bus, because they still had the gate.
The gates.
So they put them over where the bus is now. My 74-year-old train of thought just left the stage.
I have an idea. You gave me an idea on that, though. I think I know where you're going.
If they could pick up their fares over in there, and Uber's just come in, because you don't have to pay, roll right in there and get in that line and pick them up and go out. All they have to do is go across and down the first section to that platform. Just
but then I have to carry my suitcase all the way there.
Well,
Come on.
if I'm there, I'll give you a ride. Don't worry.
I know you will.
Janelle, we go way back.
No, you gave me a good idea to look into. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, and so I touched on the regulation and the. They use our 2 spots. They park on the cross. There's one Jeep parked on the crosswalk, and we say something to them. You either get a gesture, or they just look straight ahead and pretend you're not talking to them.
We do have a police officer on here, don't we? We're paying money
They
for
just started this week, the seasonal officer, too.
Oh, okay.
So
there are Uber issues, but they are killing us.
Yes.
Not to get into the whole thing, but there's another 74-year-old driver, friend of mine, and he's a driver. He does not own it. He gets half the money. And his wife passed away 3 years ago, and he put his house on his market this week. He's devastated because he can't meet his mortgage. And I haven't told anybody this, but I turned my property over to my heir last November because I can't believe that I can't do it.
I have a question, David and Mr. Rafter. At the Prospect Hill Cemetery, they have these little kind of like a mailbox where they have the bags, and they also have, that you can put them there.
Right.
Would something like that work in different spots around the airport? Would not have to have the big trash
dog
bag?
waste?
Dog waste.
yeah, we have
They
those.
got them already.
We have those. We don't. You're saying that other barrel's gone though between the
Oh yeah,
restaurant
it's been
and
on 3 or 4. I took a picture of it. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, And
Okay, I'll double check that.
somebody grabbed it. I don't know, but it's gone. It's when you put it there, we were thrilled because people were stuffing everything in the dog food thing, and then you have to walk way down to the other barrel at the front of the parking lot. But it wasn't.
Yeah, I was there this winter. It's just
It's just attention to detail stuff that bothers me, and it makes a big difference.
And
Appreciate it.
are the carts our responsibility to return them, or is it the airlines?
no, they're ours. We provide them courtesy. But the other thing too is, I believe in the near future we're going to also have the ambassadors back out there too, so we can ask for their assistance on some of this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that somebody would bring their carts to their car and then
And
not
they leave
bring
it out in
back.
the parking lot.
Yeah.
And without
Yeah.
the way the paid systems work is that's your incentive to bring them back. And quite frankly, in other airports, cab drivers, that's what they do. They bring them back to get the money back. It makes sense.
We don't mind pitching in and helping out if it makes a difference. But
Right, yeah.
Thank you.
So any questions, don't hesitate to call me.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, David.
I appreciate you
Thank
keeping an eye. Mr. Rafter, I just would like to follow up on a couple of the comments. With respect to the law enforcement, given that they're just starting, again, sort of like when we were talking about last month, on the airfield side of things,
Getting it
always
started on the
helpful to
right
start
foot.
on the right foot, and a little bit of education, and whether, I'm sure it has to go through the chief, but, perhaps it's you to the chief, whether it's a brief sit down altogether or with one of his designees, to sit down at your conference table for 15 minutes and go over the airport's expectations, given what we're paying, hundreds of thousands of dollars for law enforcement. Now, I understand that there's a safety comes first, aspect of their job, but parking on a crosswalk should be, an instant ticket, no debate. You're getting
As well as handicap.
Yeah, you park, done, ticket.
Yeah.
Unattended vehicle. There's no discussion. There's no movement. It's a ticket. In my opinion, I think you need a zero tolerance kind of a policy when it comes to that. And I would hope that, and perhaps young seasonal, they, may not be as firm or just may not know that that's the direction. But that would be my personal.
I will have a sit down with the
That if we
appropriate
briefly say this is what we're hoping for, even, and then what we get, we can see. I understand the point. I actually noticed, but didn't raise similar points because of past comments that you made. We understand the staffing concerns, but certainly the front of house is.
And I agree, but front of the house, but where the airplanes land and where we hit write-ups, that was
Yep, I understand.
a balancing act. So
Right.
I'm sure they'll get out there.
And then I had one other thing, but I guess back to the commissioner's comments. So I guess, is there any other, I don't have a giant discussion, I don't think, on public comment, but I do think it's worthy of discussion.
You brought up the handicap parking or disabled parking. The FBO, that's another place where people do think they can just pull in for a minute or two or longer than that to load their suitcases and stuff, which, I don't know, it's a balancing act. As a commissioner on disability, I don't think they should be in there for a minute, but I also understand that we've only got one 30-minute parking, and we had to have two
But that's what
disabled.
why the gate guards are there, to keep them moving, and if not,
Yeah,
issue the ticket.
It's hard for them. They're young.
Well, and
You know.
what we
One woman did. She-
part of what we'll do here is, because we were talking about working with the CSOs, they're called the seasonals, our gate guards and others, in terms of issuing tickets and how often and who and what type and all those types of things, because we have another mechanism for issuing tickets electronically.
And so our own staff has the ability to issue the
Yes.
tickets.
Mhm.
Yep.
Well, that would be huge, to get things sort of shaped up a little
Mhm.
bit. Anything else on the comments?
Mm-mm.
My only other, I meant to ask, and I apologize, is the parking system as we head into the season and Republic. We haven't heard an update. Is everything?
No, I believe Jamie's scheduled for July or August, I think it was, for a full report on the status of it, where it is, financial reports. Everything's working well. We have not had, I haven't heard any complaints. The revenue is not where we'd like it to be, but again, if you recall, last year we started off kind of in the middle of the peak season, and we forgave a lot of violations so that we could educate people on the system. So it's not a real good telling comparison, but if you look at compared to the number of man hours we're putting into it, it's significant.
And along those lines, is Republic, are you
We met,
overseeing that, do they have the person? I don't see many tickets on the windows out there.
and again, this new system that they have, and that's what I was saying, there's a spare system that we are going to get trained on. It can all be done electronically and automatically sends a notice to their home.
Okay,
Through
so
the-
they have
You won't see paper tickets. It'll just be, it tracks your license plate number, it ties it into the RMV, and they'll send a violation right directly to the home.
And are they upholding, as far as you can tell, their end of having an employee who's doing the license plate?
Yes, and it's like 1.5 employees.
Great.
Technically
Just
by
want to
budget,
know that
but-
it's
Yeah, they add somebody in the season.
Mhm.
And and again, just like chalking, you'd see downtown the chalking, they have electronic chalking. It takes a picture of the license plate, the number, the stall it's in, and everything else, and it registers it in the computer. You go through and do
And
it
you
again.
have to pay it when you get it from the RMB.
Yeah, or you don't get your registration renewed.
great. Okay, thank you. I think that covers it, unless there's any further public comment. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session per General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, A, for the purposes enumerated on the agenda, to review the executive session minutes listed. Clause 3, discuss strategy with respect to pending litigation with respect to the AIP projects, which would have the chair has determined in open session would have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the Airport Commission. Clause 3, discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for the same purpose. And Clause 6, discuss strategy with respect to airport gas lease for the same purpose that may have a detrimental effect on the negotiation position of the airport. I would entertain that motion not to return to executive session.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you all.
Okay, I'm going to bid you all a good night.
Okay.
Okay, night.
Good night,
Sit
Dylan.
tight,
Thank you for
Tony.
joining us.
Sure.
Okay, we'll talk to you
Talk to
soon.
you next month.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Yeah.
Sure.